Hello, I'm Daniela Elana. Welcome to episode 85 of Historical Paranormal. In this episode, we'll look at stillborn babies in the 1940s and 50s, bodies being used for radiation testing during the Cold War in the United States and UK. U.S. government researchers conducted radiation tests on stillborn babies in Chicago during the 1950s. The Department of Energy reported in the latest revelation about the wide-scale use of humans in Cold War experiments. In the Chicago test, scientists cremated 44 newly deceased infants and measured the amount of strontium-90, a radioactive substance, in the remains. Parents were probably not notified or asked permission for the use of their children in the experiments, according to DOE officials familiar with the case. The tests were part of Project Sunshine, a massive study conducted by the Atomic Energy Commission, or AEC, a forerunner of DOE, to determine the long-term effects of nuclear radiation fallout on humans. Strontium-90 is among the radioactive particles that typically linger in the body following nuclear weapons tests. The release of long-classified information about the Chicago Baby Project, following recent reports about the use of mentally retarded teenagers, ethnic minorities, and other disadvantaged groups in radiation tests, raises new questions about what ethical standards the federal government used in its conduct of Cold War research. DOE officials released documents about the baby test as part of its mission to inform the American public about the extent that federal researchers involved humans in radiation experiments between the early 1940s and the 1970s, after Energy Secretary Hazel R. O'Leary expressed outrage about the radiation experiments. President Clinton appointed an interagency committee to investigate the test and determine whether the victims should be compensated. Congress conducted hearings about the use of humans in radiation tests. The House of Veteran Affairs Committee conducted sessions as well. Although some studies on Project Sunshine were published in the 1950s, most of the details about the Chicago Baby Project were contained in secret government documents that were declassified. Researchers of the Los Alamos Laboratory, a DOE facility in New Mexico, found the documents in their files. The project was led by Willard Libby, a University of Chicago scientist and senior AEC official, who is now dead. Researchers gathered data on the babies to determine how much fallout humans could bear, said Steve Galson, a DOE radiation specialist. The experiment was probably also useful in deciding what the health effects were of the nuclear weapons test being made at the time. He said the research used babies because they provided the best measure of the amount of radiation in the body was due to fallout rather than from ingesting food or other sources. According to scientists familiar with the study, all of the babies were stillborn in the early to mid-50s. According to the documents, none of them died as a result of radiation treatments. DOE specialists said Galson acknowledged that some key aspects of the study are not known, such as how the researchers obtained the babies, how much the parents knew about the experiments, and what happened to the remains after the tests were completed. We are still trying to find out a lot of things about the test, he said. Don Preston, a retired Los Alamos researcher familiar with tests, defended them in an interview yesterday. In an interview, there's probably no other way for science to obtain this kind of information at the time, he said. The use of rats or other animals would not obtain the same results. This was a case of children who were no longer beneficial to the population being able to provide information that was enormously important for the rest of the world's children, he said. Aside from the stillborn babies, Project Sunshine researchers probed the level of radioactive isotopes left in cheese, milk, animal bones, and other substances as a result of the nuclear weapons test. In the end, they found that the residual effect of the fallout was not extensive in most humans. In 2001, an article was published titled "Britain Snatched Babies' Bodies for Nuclear Labs." Britain's nuclear industry was involved in a top-secret international operation of still-dead babies for up to 3 decades, according to newly classified documents. The shocking revelation comes in the wake of the controversy over the organ retention scandal at some of its country's leading hospitals. The papers released by the American Department of Energy show that scientists from the UK Atomic Energy Authority removed children's bones and bodies to ship to the United States for classified nuclear experiments. Among the hundreds of pages of documents released are letters exchanged between American and British government scientists in which they discuss levels of radiation in the ribs of stillborn babies and list of dead children's bodies obtained from the Middlesex Hospital and spirited to American nuclear laboratories. As we know, our history of humankind is dark, riddled with demons of all kinds of horror. And truthfully, I'd imagine that many of these families didn't know that their stillborns are being used in this way. Similar to how a lot of stem cell research is conducted from aborted fetuses. One could argue if someone goes and agrees to have an abortion that maybe they're okay with their fetus being experimented on. Even then, to me, that's a very gray area. And I'm no way saying I'm for abortion or for experimenting on children, whether they're dead or alive. What I am saying here is that we understand that there's always been an issue of consent when it comes to the experimentation of humans by their governments, and this is one of those situations. So what are your thoughts on this matter? And I will talk to you in episode 86 of Historical Paranormal. Until next time.